Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering another caliber that I have never loaded for before, and that is 30-06. And we're going to be loading this with the 200 grain Barnes TSX copper hunting bullet. This thing is a monster. It's a flat base bullet, but I've never loaded anything that heavy before, so we'll talk about that more in a little bit. You'll notice that this set of dies is fairly old, and that's because they're borrowed. And in fact, none of this loading that I'm doing is for me. Now, we will be testing this load. We'll be getting it out on the range and going through a load workup and all of that. But this load is meant for a friend who is going on a bear hunt this fall and has been having a really hard time finding ammunition, especially with his preferred bullet, which is this 200 grain Barnes TSX. These dies do look to be in pretty good shape, although you can see that the information is pretty old and worn. This is actually kind of cool to get to use this old set of dies. The dies do look to be in pretty good shape, very minimal surface rust on them, so I don't think we're going to have a problem with that at all. The one thing I've encountered with RCBS dies in the past is that they don't have the greatest neck tension. It's a little bit more than I like, and the only experience I have with that is in my 308 dies, which have 4 to 5 thousandths neck tension, where I'd more like to have about 2. But anyway, we're not going to worry about that too much today. We're just going to go through the load workup, because this is what we've got. For this video, I have decided to go through this load process completely start to finish. And when I say start to finish, I mean from dirty, fired brass. We're going to go through every step to get this into firing condition and then do our load workup. So we're going to start out over here on the Hornady single stage and just decap all of this. Alright, so setting up this die is not very hard at all. All you got to do is raise the ram, screw the die down until it touches the shell holder, and then I'm just going to give a little bit of a tighten on that lock ring, and that's all it takes. If you don't get it dialed in exactly, it doesn't matter. All we're doing is pushing the primer onto that decapping pin and decapping it. The one component I thought we may be missing for loading 30-06 is a shell holder, and just a little bit of research, I've never really messed with 30-06 before, a little bit of research revealed that it is the same size case head as 6.5 Creedmoor and 308, so we're not going to have any problem with that. We'll just use the RCBS shell holder. I believe this is a number 1. Nope, RCBS number 3, and this again is the one that I picked up when I started loading 308. So we're just going to run this brass through. Super easy, don't even have to run it all the way in, just till it pops out that primer and then back down. This brass is Remington brass from Core Locked Ammo. This was loaded for, I think 2 of these boxes were 150 grain core locks, and the other was 220. Some of the brass does have some, and you can see it's got some fouling around the case mouth. I'm hoping that will all polish off. But I've got 60 pieces of it here that he gave me to load with, so we're just going to run these through. I won't make you sit and watch all of this. I'll just do a few of them here. Boy, that is long brass compared to anything I've ever loaded before. I'll just do a few of those here, and then we will move on to the next step. For those of you that have never seen this before, so right now, as the brass is, we have a primer in here that's been spent, and that's got to come out. So we'll just run that up into the die, pop out the primer, and we've got an empty primer pocket there. The reason that I want to do this before I throw this in the tumbler is that that primer pocket is full of fouling from the last primer and from the last shot. So I want to be able to get that primer pocket clean as well, which is why we are depriming it first. Okay, so I've got all 60 pieces deprimed. Now the next step is going to be to tumble them. Since these have some pretty heavy fouling on them, probably just from sitting for so long, we're going to wet tumble these. And I've been wet tumbling all of my fired brass. We will use the Frankfurt Arsenal wet tumbler system. And my dad actually gave me this set for Christmas. We'll probably talk about this in more detail later, but I've been doing all of my brass, at least for the first time it's tumbled after it's been fired, in this wet tumbler, and it has worked extremely well. So I'm just going to load all this brass right into the barrel here. Alright, that's all 60 pieces here in the tumbler. Then I'm going to add, I believe this is about 2.5 pounds of stainless steel pins here. Everybody says to use 5 pounds. I haven't had any trouble using just half of that bag. Then when these get dull and they need to be replaced, I've got another 2.5 pounds in the bag I can use. I will probably upgrade to the stainless steel chips in the future, but this is what I've got for now, and it seems to work just fine. So I'm just going to dump these in here. Then the mixture of stuff I'm going to add in here is a little splash of this car wash and wax concentrate. Got a tip from a guy over on the Johnny's Reloading Bench live stream that this stuff works really good and leaves just a little bit of a coating on the brass, which we're going to take off later, but it's going to help things go a little bit easier for the rest of this process. So I'm just going to give us a little bit of a splash of it in there. That's probably more than I needed, but that's all right. Then we're going to use a little bit of Lemmy Shine, and this stuff, you don't want to leave the cases sitting in water with this stuff for very long because it will leach out the zinc, from what I've read anyway. But we're just going to put about 2 9mm cases full in there. Not very much at all. This bottle will probably last me quite a while using it at this rate. And basically what this is, it's citric acid, but it's sold as a dish detergent booster, and most guys that wet tumble end up using this. So there's that. Now, I won't show you guys this part, but I'm going to give a healthy squirt of Dawn dish soap in there, and then fill the thing all the way full with tap hot water. And we're going to tumble this for about an hour because this stuff is so heavily soiled. I may pull a case out and see what it looks like, and we may go just a little bit longer, but I'll start with an hour. I won't, like I said, I won't show you guys the whole wet tumbling process. We'll get into that probably in a different video, but lots of other guys have covered it. You guys don't need me to do a video on it. So I'll get this going, and we'll come back when the brass goes into the case dryer. Alright folks, we'll take a quick look at this brass after 1 hour of being in the tumbler, and you can see it is sparkly clean. The primer pockets still have just a little remnant of fouling in the bottom of them. Not much at all. And that's not going to hurt anything. I'm not worried about that. Had I run it for another hour, probably could have gotten all that out, but I'm not worried about it. You can see all of that fouling at the mouth of the case is gone. This one's got just like a little bit of discoloration of the case from where it was. Nothing much at all, and nothing for sure that we're going to worry about. So that's just 1 hour in the tumbler, nice and clean. I'm going to pile it up here in my case dryer. We'll do probably 20 or 30 pieces per level, and I'll run this for about 2 hours. In the middle of that, I'm going to come down and agitate them so that the ones that are sitting together, those spots will be open, and hopefully we'll get some nice clean brass free of any water spots. I was thinking about it for a minute, and since we have such a small volume of brass, just 60 cases, I can arrange these all so none of them are touching each other, and they kind of sit on these grooves here, and it should work pretty well so that I don't have to come and agitate it. After a while, I'll just let it run for 2 hours, and we'll see if it's dry. And since there's such a large volume, good size opening at the mouth of each case, I'm guessing it's going to be just fine at that 2 hour mark. Alright folks, so 2 hours in the dehydrator, got these nice and dry. They are perfectly polished, cleaned inside and out, mostly the primer pockets cleaned. They are ready to go, ready to get on to the next process, which is sizing. So let's grab out from this set here the sizing die, which does have a decapping pin in it. Let me make sure. Okay, so this die has a lock ring that is tightened down. Let me grab a wrench here. And yes, is going to lose whatever settings he's got on there. But I don't think these dies have been used in quite a long time. Alright, that is very, very tight on there. And I do have that set screw loosened up quite a bit, but I'm guessing it hasn't been moved in several years. Alright, let's get over to the press and get this die set up. Alright, we're here at the top of the press, and I'm going to get a lock and load bushing snapped in. Then we'll raise the ram on the press with the shell holder installed. Screw this sizing die down until it touches. Oh, looks like I've got to back off that die just a little bit, or that lock ring. Wow, we've actually got a long way to go. Okay, there, we're contacting the shell holder. All right. I want to make sure that this is a full-length sizing die. I'm seeing the markings are rusted on the top to where I can't see them very well. So I want to make sure that this die is, in fact, full length. What I'm going to do for that, and it might not be the best way, but it's the only way I can think of right now, I'm going to grab my calipers and let's measure the base of the cartridge right up here by the head. We're going to measure it at what should be the widest point there. I've got 0.468. So let's do, I'm probably going to do something different on the rest of these cases for sizing. But let me get a little sizing die wax on here. And this is the stuff that's Imperial branded. A little bit in the mouth there. We will be tumbling this lube off later. All right, so what did we say that was? 0.468. We'll run the case up in there. That is very tight. Tell you what, I'm going to double check these instructions that came with it here and make sure the dies haven't changed a lot through the years. All right, the instructions say screw it down until the die touches the shell holder. Set the large lock ring securely against the face of the press. We got that. Yeah, okay. So let's just make sure. Yep, that's what it says. Just like I thought. So let me make sure here that our case is good and lubed. all the way down the body. And we'll run it up in here. Okay, there we got a size. And I'm next to positive that's a full-length die just by feeling how it went in there. All right, let's measure that same spot on the base of the case. Yeah, we're at 0.463. So we went down 5 thousandths there. 463. So about 5 thousandths on there. It is indeed a full-length die, and because of how much work that took, I think I will go through with this sizing lube and do each one of these cases individually. All right, and while I'm doing this, I am going all the way in, not really worrying about getting a perfect 2,000 shoulder bump, because I'm not 100% sure that all of this was fired in the same rifle. I'm pretty sure it is. I think that's what my friend whose brass this is said. I'm pretty sure he said it was all fired in the same gun. But just to be sure, I'm going to go ahead and full-length size as much as it'll go. But I am kind of curious how much this die is bumping back the shoulder. So let me get out my tools to measure shoulder bump. All right, this is the Hornady Headspace Comparator Kit, and I'm going to look to see what it says. It says C, bushing C for 30-06, and that happens to be the one I already have in the comparator here. So let's do that. I'll get this attached to my caliper and zero the calipers. I'm hoping we have enough travel to get that big old long 30-06 case in there. All right, here's one that hasn't been sized. We do, we've got plenty. All right, so I'm gonna get that seated as far as I can. Looks like 2.046. I'm just gonna zero it right there, and then let's size it. And let's see how much shoulder bump we got on that. If we didn't get any, I may have to tighten the die down a little bit more. Okay, it looks like we actually got 5 thousandths shoulder bump on that, which is probably more than I would normally want, but we're gonna go with it for this gun. Like I said, I want this to be uber reliable and definitely feed in all sorts of conditions. So that extra 3 thousandths or so bump, we're not going to worry about it. Okay, let's do another case here. You can see how much that's moving around my table. That takes a good amount of work to size that brass. All right, that's interesting. I'm seeing only a 0.5 thousandth shortening on that one. Let me set that one aside and make sure I didn't mess something up. So here's another piece of brass that has not been sized. Okay, I'm showing it 1.5 thousandths shorter. Okay, let's zero it. Okay, we've got it zeroed for this piece of brass. We'll get the case good and lubed up and see how much we're bumping it. And it could just be that I had a lube on the neck that last one was measuring. All right, this one I've got a 2 thousandth bump. So it's maybe not the most accurate, but we're gonna go with it for now. That size, I do have some cam over in the press, although it's not super aggressive. Let me do one more here, because I definitely want it to have a decent bump on that shoulder, probably more than 2/1000ths. But that first one that sized with a 5/1000th bump is has got me thrown off. All right, let me clean that lube off just to be sure we're not measuring that. And it shouldn't matter, but here we go. All right, I'm not showing much bump at all. So, contrary to what I said, that we were just gonna go with it, let's screw in that die just a little bit more and see if we can get a few thousandths bump on that shoulder. Cam over is pretty aggressive now. You can hear that. Let me do a fresh case here. All right, that one is saying I bumped at 7/1000ths, which is too much. I'll set that case aside. I'll back that out a little bit and we'll see if we can get maybe back around that 5/1000th mark, which is probably closer to what I want. Okay, this case has the same 0. All right, we've got 5/1000ths on that one. So we'll go with that setting. We do still have a decent cam over there, but it's not quite as aggressive as it was. I did set aside that one case that I bumped 2/1000ths, or that I bumped 7/1000ths. We'll set that one aside and use it as maybe a cider load. All right, so I do have to go back through, unfortunately, and run all of these cases back through again at that setting to make sure the shoulder is bumped about the same. All right, I'm glad I checked that. I hope I'm not overworking the brass, but I've got at least 4/1000ths now, which is good. All right, let me pop through these. I'll size them all, just like I'm doing here, except I won't be measuring each one. And then we'll get on to the next step. I've finished sizing all 60 pieces of the brass, which means that it's time for trimming. So I'm gonna pop off my comparator here. Make sure my calipers are zeroed, and let's see what the overall length is. Trim length is 2.484 inches, and max is 2.494. That one's at 2.492, so we're almost to max. 2.496, we're over max. 2.498. Yes, so we definitely need to trim all of this brass. Let me double check my number one more time. And yes, I could use the Spear manual too, but the Hornady manual is what I use for most things. And I'm sure the numbers are the same because that's a SAMI spec number. Yes, 2.484 with a max of 2.494. So we're gonna jump over to the trimmer, the case trimmer, and get it set up to go through all of these cases. All right, so here is my Frankfurt Arsenal case trimmer. This is what I use to trim everything. It's actually the only method I have of trimming. Grab a couple pieces of brass here. I've been using this trimmer to do 223, so I'm gonna have to swap out several parts to get it ready for 30-06. So let's pick a case holder size, and it should be the same as 308, and it is. It's the middle size for this. And then we'll grab a shoulder stop. And this one looks like it's going to work just fine. So I'll just pull this off. And we got some brass shavings in there, that's okay. I'll use a 223 case to pull out the shoulder stop that I was using for it. You can see it's quite a bit smaller there and sits against the shoulder of a 223 case. So I'll put that back away, as well as the case squeezer thing. Let me get the brass chips all brushed out of this mouth opening, and that should be good. And then I'll drop in the shoulder stop. Now, of course, 30-06 has a much longer neck than just about anything else I've done before. Yeah, and we're way into the cutting blade there, so let me go ahead and put in our case grabber, screw this on a little bit, and then I'm going to loosen this entire assembly. And we're going to spin it. Of course, I always do this wrong first. It's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, which is backwards from everything. But of course, that's because of how the cutter head spins. We're going to pull that out quite a ways. And I'm going to use this case to set the trim depth. So I'll take that bit down until it grabs a hold of my case and holds it just barely. And then I was actually pretty close. I will tighten it going left here until my shell just barely touches the cutter head. That's where I want it. All right, so I'll lock it down using this lock ring here, flip on the machine. And we'll give it just a little kiss there. And you don't really have to do all that turning, but I like to, especially when I'm setting the machine. All right, let's see what that trimmed it to. Okay, that just barely took a little bit off. We're down to 2.493 there, so I need to go down quite a ways. This does have increments right in here on it, and I do have a full video on this trimmer. It's not a very good video because it's one of the first ones I did, but this has 0.002 increments on it. Let's go down 5. Just to make sure we don't overshoot it. I'll pull that out and measure it. Okay, I'm glad I only went down the 0.005 because here we are, just 1,000th over trim length. I'm going to leave it right there. Oh, that's showing 2,000ths over trim length. Let me go ahead and... All right, I'm going to chamfer and debur this case mouth. And yes, this machine does have tools on here for it, but this cutter, I think, cuts way too fast and removes way too much material. I just barely want to knock off the burrs there. And that little hand tool does a really nice job of it. This came with my single stage press kit. All right, let me make sure, measure that again. And it's showing 2.487 or 2.488 now, which makes me think I've got just a little bit of a burr still on there. Yeah, there we go. 2.487. So, tell you what, since it's saying that, let me take it down another 2.5 thousandths, according to the not quite accurate scale on the side of this. And we'll pop that in again. All right, that just barely kissed the mouse on that one. Ah, there we go. We're to trim length, or maybe a 1/2 thousandth under, 2.484. Yeah, there we go. 2.485, whatever. We're close enough. I'm gonna set that case aside. Let's run the next one. Let's see how far we've got to go on this one. 2.492, so we've got to go quite a ways. Okay, let's see where we're at there. .488. It's not cutting as consistently as I would like it to, and I wonder if it's because the shoulder angle on the 30-06. All right, guys, this is me about halfway through trimming this brass with a message saying I'm an idiot. Of course, the brass that I used to set this up was the brass that I also used to set up the sizing die, which of course is a bad idea because this spaces off of the shoulder of the case, which is what we were adjusting with the sizing die. So once I got into the actual main batch of 50 pieces of brass here in the tray, I'm getting numbers of 2.482 or 2.483 every single time, and that's what we want. So yeah, it is consistent enough. I was just not being smart when I set it up. This is 2 thousandths below trim length. That's perfectly fine. Nothing to worry about at all there. So, all right, I'm gonna finish this up and then we'll move on. All right, folks, so we have the brass here and it's been all trimmed. And you can see, let me see if I can get you to see inside here. We've got brass shavings on the insides of the cases now, and knocking them gets some of them out, but you can see not all of it. There's lube inside that neck that the brass shavings are stuck to, and it makes it just a little bit tough. I also do kind of want to get that lube off the case, even though it probably wouldn't hurt anything. I want to get it all off so that nothing interferes with my powder or primers. So what I'm going to do is throw all of this brass into my dry tumbler. Now, I don't dry tumble any dirty cases anymore. I wet tumble them, get all the dirt off, and then I have my clean media reserved for tumbling already cleaned cases just to get that lube and the brass shavings out, and it seems to work really well. So I'm going to toss all of the brass in here and let it run for about an hour, and then we will finally be ready to load this brass. That is going to do it for the brass prep portion of loading for 30-06. I think we got a good solid base to start on. In the next part, which should be coming fairly shortly here, we're going to start loading and test what you'll see will end up to be a couple of different combinations trying to get a good load worked up for 30-06. So that part, including all of the actual loading procedures for this ammunition, will be coming in the next part. Hope you come back for that. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you check us out on Instagram, Patreon, and yeah, I think that's it for now. Again, thanks for watching, and y'all have a good one.